Have you ever stopped to think about the story that might be hidden inside just a single word? Well, today we're going to do exactly that. We're diving into the Chinese character for honey, mi, which is pronounced me. Now, it looks simple enough, right? But once you start to unpack it, you find this incredible story about nature, ancient philosophy, and, believe it or not, a bit of a logical puzzle.
So, let me ask you this. What could a roof, an ancient weapon, and an insect possibly have in common? I know, it sounds like the beginning of a really strange joke, but the answer is honey. Seriously, these three things are the actual building blocks of the character me, and we're about to see exactly how they all fit together.
All right, so here it is, the full character, me. Like so many Chinese characters, it's not just a single symbol. It's a combination of different parts. The best way to think about it is like a whole story packed into one little square, built from smaller pieces that each have their own unique history and meaning.
So yeah, we're talking about me, pronounced me, which means honey, and as you can see, it's made up of three very distinct parts. To really get what the whole thing is about, we first have to deconstruct it, take the story apart, piece by piece.
Okay, so you know how it goes with any good puzzle. The first step is always to take it apart. We're going to break me down into its three core components, and we'll look at each one all by itself to figure out its original meaning, before we see how on earth they combine.
Here they are, our three puzzle pieces. Right at the top, you've got Mao, which stands for a shelter or a roof. Then, right in the middle, we have Bi, which is a bit more abstract. It means certainty. And holding it all up at the bottom is Mu, the character for an insect. A shelter, certainty, and an insect. Yeah, it's a pretty weird combination.
Now, the top and bottom parts are actually pretty straightforward. That top part, meow, is basically a little drawing of a roof. You can almost see the chimney, can't you? And the bottom one, moosh, means insect, which, for honey, totally makes sense. But it's this middle piece, bi, meaning certainty, that's the most abstract and honestly where the key to the whole story is hiding.
So let's really zoom in on that mysterious middle part. How in the world did ancient Chinese scribes decide to represent a really complex idea, like certainty, with this specific symbol? Well, the answer, as it turns out, has to do with an ancient weapon. This is really the key question, isn't it? If you look closely at the character he, it's actually a picture of a spear separating two things. So, how do you get from a spear splitting something in two to the abstract feeling of absolute certainty?
Well, the theory here is absolutely fascinating. The idea is that the character he visually represents the act of polarization. The spear is this tool that creates a clean, undeniable break, splitting a single hole into two very distinct opposing parts, think yin and yang. This act of creating a clear, definite separation became the visual metaphor for the very concept of certainty.
And this really gets to the philosophical heart of it. Certainty comes from the knowledge that things can be clearly defined and separated. In a lot of ancient Chinese philosophy, the universe itself started as one whole thing before it split into opposing forces. So this fundamental law of division was seen as an absolute truth, a certainty. The character itself is a picture of that very process.
Okay, so we've got our three pieces, the shelter, the spear of certainty, and the insect. Now for the really fun part, putting them all back together. And as you're about to see, the final combination is, well, it's a little ironic.
First, let's just combine the top two parts. When you put the symbol for certainty underneath the symbol for a shelter or a roof, you get a totally new meaning, a feeling of safety, of calm, of quiet. It makes sense, right? Certainty brings predictability, that feeling that everything is safe and secure under your own roof.
But here is where it gets weird. You take that new symbol for calm and quiet, and then you stick the character for insect right underneath it. Now, we all know that bees are anything but quiet. They're constantly buzzing, always moving. So why would you combine calm with a buzzing insect to make the word for honey? It feels like a total contradiction.
So here's one possible answer. Maybe the certainty here isn't about sound at all, but about a process. It could be pointing to the certainty you get from just observing nature for thousands of years. The knowledge that these specific insects, bees, will certainly and predictably produce honey. From that perspective, the character captures this fundamental truth that people have known forever.
All right, now that we've dug into the ancient story, let's bring it into the present day and see how this character and its core idea of sweetness is used in modern Chinese. Because the idea of honey goes way beyond something you just put in your tea.
Let's look at a couple of great examples. You have the phrase tian mi, which literally translates to sweet honey, People use it all the time to describe the feeling of a sweet, loving relationship. And then there's tian yan mi yu, which means sweet words, honeyed speech. This is what you'd call flattery or sweet talking. In both of these, that core idea of honey's sweetness gets applied to our emotions and how we talk to each other.
So let's do a quick recap of this incredible story we've just uncovered. The character for honey, mi, is made of a shelter, a symbol for certainty, and an insect. That wild symbol for certainty actually comes from an ancient picture of a spear creating a clean split. Then the character creates this beautiful irony by combining a sense of calm with a buzzing insect, which probably points to the certainty of nature's cycles. And today, its meaning has grown to describe the sweetness we find in love and in language.
It just goes to show you how much history and deep thinking can be packed into just a single character. And it kind of leaves you with this one last thought. What other amazing stories are hiding in plain sight, right inside the words you use every single day?